everybody. It's lovely to see you all. I'll just say that Yosef and I have done quite a lot of speaking together as the groups that come here to Ketura, and people are always much more interested in what he has to say than what I have to say. So I'm going to be hopefully very quick, but so I'll give a little introduction, and then Yosef is going to tell a little bit of a story. And then, as I said, it's really important to us to leave time to answer questions. So we're sitting here in my office on Kibbutz Ketura, and it's really great to see everyone from all over the world. Well, not all over the world, Israel and the United States, I think. My connection to Yosef is, as you all probably know, on kibbutzim, there's a tradition of adopting people who come to the kibbutz, adoption, host families, providing host families for people who come for various periods of time. And a couple of years ago, the kibbutz was sort of honored to host as a community a group of volunteers, 4 of whom from a Masa program, 4 of whom were from the five of whom were from the Abayudayeh Jewish Community of Uganda. And a sign went up on the bulletin board saying anyone who's interested in hosting, talk to the person in charge. Cecil, my husband, said, "Oh, we're definitely going to adopt someone from the Abayudayeh. It's so interesting." And I was in rabbinical school. I was busy. I was like, you know what, Cecil, there's going to be so many people who want to adopt people from them. We can let other people have this experience where we don't need it. So we actually didn't adopt anyone. And in the meantime, I was asked to start teaching them once they got here, because somebody felt that it was important for them to continue their Jewish education. So I met every Shabbat with the 5 of them. It was really fun and interesting. And about halfway into their stay here, into their few months stay here, Yosef and another woman, Rebecca, their host family left the kibbutz. Not having to do with them, obviously, but their host family left the kibbutz. And so we got Yosef and Rebecca to come be our adopted children. And the first night they came, I can only tell you, it was such a click. We just had this amazing family dinner, and it was wonderful. And basically since then, Yosef has felt like a part of our family, and he'll tell you the story, but when he came back to make Aliyah. I've gotten very involved in trying to help Yosef make Aliyah. I realized after this, after a couple of, a year or two of this, dealing with which it started out as a very kind of personal crusade, like here's this guy who we're really connected to, who's Jewish, and the state of Israel isn't letting him make Aliyah. The penny dropped for me, and I realized this is not only about Yosef. It was never only about Yosef or Yosef, but for me, I realized it wasn't only about Yosef, it was about the nature of the Jewish state and what it means to be a Jewish state. And that's also part of what is really driving me to try to help him. I want a Jewish state that recognizes Jews of all flavors and colors. And there's other people who live here who are in position of power who I think have a much more narrow vision of what it means to be Jewish. So as you know, the law of return, Chok HaShvut, was made into a law in 1950, soon after the state of Israel. We just came from Iyyun session, which really also talked a lot about this issue of what it means to be a Jewish state and to be a democratic and Jewish state. But there is a special connection between Israel and Jews around the world. And part of that is Chok HaShvut, the law of return, which gives every Jew who expresses a desire to live in Israel the right to make Aliyah and become a citizen, unless that person works against the Jewish people or is thought to endanger public health or public safety, or has a criminal past, which would endanger the public. There was just a big case about that actually really recently here. But Chok HaShvut, the law of return, which says every Jew has the right to come to Israel to be a citizen here, didn't define who is a Jew. Didn't define what it meant to be Jewish. So it was a law that was sort of, its fate was to be debated hotly since the time that it was legislated. And I think because being Jewish, once Chok HaShvut came into play, and once Jews had a state, as we've seen in many other cases, the idea of being Jewish is no longer a narrow definition of that sort of gives you rights in peoplehood. We're also talking about rights as citizens of a modern country. And that really changes the discourse a little bit and has become a very thorny issue and has led to a bunch of Supreme Court cases. And so in 1970, actually, the law was changed, was adapted a little bit as a result of Supreme Court cases, one of which is very famous in Young Judea because we had a very well-known pu'ula about it that many of us either participated in or led, the Brother Daniel case, which as a result of that case and some other cases, the definition was changed to say that the Chok HaShvut, the law of return, would apply to someone born of a Jewish mother or converted. Of course, it also we don't have in Israel a law of conversion. We never said what conversion looks like, who gets the right to convert people to be recognized for Chok HaShvut, and it's been hotly debated ever since. The reform and conservative movements had there was a status quo in Israel in which converts from recognized Jewish communities among the major denominations abroad, they would be recognized as Jews for the right of return if they were converted abroad, not by the Rabbanut necessarily, but they would be recognized for the right of return if they were converted abroad. If they were converted in Israel, they would not be. And so conservative and reform rabbis in Israel for a long time have not been allowed to convert people who don't already have the right to live in Israel. Until exactly a year ago, March 1st, 2001, when the courts made a decision that we conservative and reform rabbis could convert people in Israel for the right of return. It has been 15 years, that case was 15 years waiting for a decision, and it has only very slowly started. It's not like there was a floodgates of letting people who were converted here become citizens. It's very slowly, they've let a few people who were converted here after that decision become citizens. So it's a very sort of brief history and overview of the law of return and our lack of a law of conversion. And I'm going to hand it over to Yosef, who'll tell you a little bit more about his story.
Hello everyone, my name is Yosef Kibita. It has been already mentioned. I come from a Jewish community in Uganda called the Abayudayeh, the community that started practicing Judaism in 1919. We celebrated 100 years of being Jewish people in 2019. We are now around the 102 plus years when we are practicing Judaism. Our Judaism was not, we didn't become Jewish people by blood or by birth, but we became Jewish people by choice. Like the founder of our community called Semeika Kungulu. I know maybe some of you read about the Abayudayeh community. Semeika Kungulu just fell in love with the Bible, reading the Bible, and he read a lot about the 5 books of Moses, and then he started practicing the way the book was telling him to do. He circumcised himself. He kept Shabbat the book say, the 5 books of Moses said, and this is how it started, and now it has been generations and generations until to my generation of I think seventh generation. I first came to Israel. Before I forget, despite the fact that we have been practicing Judaism for 100 years plus, we only had our first conversion as Jewish people to be recognized by the state of Israel in 2002. Unfortunately, we didn't get a recognition either by the Jewish agents or the state of Israel, because the reason being we didn't have a recognized rabbi by then, since our rabbi was still in study in rabbinical school, and the law says any Jewish community that be recognized as a Jewish community, it should have a leader. So we were not recognized by either of the two. So in 2008, when our rabbi finished his studies, his rabbinical studies, we did another conversion in 2008 after he came back from USA, Zigura Rabbinical School. He came back as a graduated rabbi, and then we had another conversion. So after this conversion, now the community was fully recognized because we had a rabbi. So now the Jewish agency fortunately recognized our community as part of the conservative movement or Masorti movement in Israel, but the state of Israel didn't recognize our state. So when I came to Israel, I came on a Masa program in 2017. It was February. It was a 5-month program. I came with other four youth from my community. We were 5 in number. So we spent here 5 months, 2 months in Jerusalem and 3 months in the kibbutz, in the Kibbutz Ketura. That's how I got to know about the kibbutz. And I guess when I came to Israel, arriving in Jerusalem being the highest religious city that I have ever stayed in, it was so inspiring to me. Like I felt something that I'd never felt in my life. Like I remember one Shabbat when we even missed to prepare dinner because we were using it to Ugandan time of like the shops are open on Friday, and the shops are open because they don't recognize Saturday as a Sabbath. They recognize Sunday because it's the most population is Christian. So for us, we thought the things works the way it works in Uganda, and we didn't think of buying stuff to cook in time. And then we had to sleep hungry, but it was again fun because it was it was something new. It was something special. Like the shops are closed, no cars moving, no public buses moving. It was totally different. It was like the opposite of our country. So I got so much inspired by the life of the Jewish life of the Jewish life here in Israel. And then as someone, I always had a dream that maybe if one time I live in Israel, I have the chance to live in Israel, I would love to live in Israel because I'm Jewish. Why not? Because Israel is a Jewish country. It's for Jewish people. So I have the right to live in Israel. So I didn't waste any time during the program. I didn't even wait for the program to finish. I started working on my Aliyah. I applied my Aliyah online. I got in contact with a Jewish agent, and we exchanged questions, emails, and I was answering them right. And before I left, before the end of the program, we had already finished the interviews with the Jewish agent that I qualified to make Aliyah. Because being a participant on the Masa program, then that meant that I qualified to make Aliyah. I'm Jewish. So I went back home for 1 month, but like the experience I got from Jerusalem to Ketura, I got my host family. I got my so loving mother who loved me like I'm part of her kids. I was like, this is my place to live. I really want to live here. So when I went to Uganda after the program, I felt like I felt out of place. So I was like, why don't I go back to Israel? Because I feel like Israel is now my home. So I came back again as a volunteer, but for me, I thought like when I come here, because I had already applied and the agent told me you qualify. So I thought that when I come here, it will be so faster for me to make career because they will not need to transport me back to the country because I'm already in the country. So on my arrival, I called the agent that said I qualified to make career, letting him that I came back to the country and I want to proceed with my earlier process. So the guy was so humble and he talked to me, but he told me that, okay, we will welcome you back to the country, but unfortunately, the Jewish agency deals with people who are making Aliyah from abroad, not within the country. So the idea is, the idea I'm telling you is that just contact the Interior Ministry direct. So after 1 week, I got my application. I went to the nearest office, Interior Ministry office in Eilat, which is 30 minutes from my kibbutz. I went with my application, well filled, my names and everything. I had all the requirements that the application needed, and I presented them to the offices. I was so surprised when it was cancelled. Like it was a big X. We don't know about your Judaism. We don't know about your community, and you're not allowed to make Aliyah. I was so shocked because I've been Jewish the whole of my life, and I have been practicing Judaism the whole of my life, and someone is telling me you're not Jewish, you're not qualified to make Aliyah, and I believe this is a Jewish country. This is the only country I know it's Jewish, and a Jewish person can be allowed to stay. So I called a friend of mine who is a rabbi and the director of Rabbinical Assembly of Conservative Movement in Israel called Rabbi Sachs. He's a friend and he was one of the Beit Din who came to convert us in Uganda. So I called him, I told him, you know what, Rabbi? They have denied my application. They have crossed it. They say I'm not Jewish. They don't know about my community. What can I do? Rabbi, I was so heartbroken, but the rabbi told me, calm down, we're going to handle this. Just calm down. So without wasting any time, we got a lawyer he got a lawyer from Iraq. It's a religious
Israel Religious Action Center, which used to be called the Israel Reform Action Center.
Yeah, so we got a lawyer. The lawyer filed in the case immediately. And then, because I was supposed to be deported, because I'm not Jewish, so you have to go back to your country. So I was supposed to be deported in 3 days, and then the lawyer filed in the case to the Supreme Court, and then my deportation was cancelled. So we had the first court hearing. I'll not go on mentioning the dates because it will make the speech long and we don't have enough time. But the first court hearing, the judge commanded the Interior Ministry to give me a working visa because I was just a volunteer. So the judge thought like I can't live on just volunteering. I have to work. So the second court hearing, things were still complicated. My conversion is not really recognized. My community was recognized after my conversion. So it was complicated a bit. So the last court hearing, the third one, here the judge brought in a suggestion. He said, okay, the problem here is the conversion. Yosef was converted before the community was recognized by the Jewish agency. So if we are dealing with the issue of the conversion, then Yosef is not the right test case to use here. So I bring in the suggestion is Yosef can go abroad. He can go to USA. He can go to United Kingdom, and convert with the community that is already recognized by the state of Israel, and then come back to the state and do the conversion. Or he can go back to his community, because now all the conversion is from 2009 until today. They are recognized by the Jewish agency, so he can go and convert again and come back and try to push for the community conversion. And then the people who were around me told me, I think let's go with the one of converting you as an individual. Let's first help you as yourself, and then we shall deal with the community issue later. So as we were preparing to go abroad to convert, to do my conversion, Ima talked about the recognition of conversion is in Israel. That was decided on 1st of March, that all the conversions that are done by non-Orthodox movements can be recognized under the law of return when they are done within the country. So we said, okay, then there is no time to waste to go abroad. Now you do your conversion within the country, because they are now recognized to do the conversions, and then our people can be allowed to under the law of return. So on 16th March, I went and I met with the Beit Din of conservative movement in Israel. I did my conversion, and then I submitted in my application in June 27th. And then the court was given 5 months. The interior ministry was given 5 months to decide if they kick me out of the country or they accept me as a Jewish person. So we waited June, we waited July, we waited August, we waited September, we waited at almost towards the end of December. Then they replied to us with a rejection. You're not allowed to make Aliyah. Again, after converting 3 times, 2 times in Uganda, 1 time in Israel, and after even converting the conversions of the non-Orthodox movements, they still said I don't qualify to make Aliyah. Basing on the issue that I just converted without doing a special study for conversion. And that I asked myself, someone who has been Jewish for the whole of his life, which kind of Jewish study do you want him to do to be ready for conversion? And then after that, like, my lawyer is really strong. He said she wrote an appeal immediately to the Interior Ministry that this is not right. This person was they were given a letter from the rabbis explaining that this person has been Jewish for the whole of his time. He doesn't need to go through the study. Why should he go through the study? They got a letter from the community that I'm active in the synagogue, I'm active in the community, like I can say I'm clean. I can say that. So, but despite of having all these accompanying letters plus that of the lawyer, they still rejected it. So after the petition, now here they put in some force. They said, okay, we now give you 30 days to leave the country, because we still claim that you wasted your time. We gave you 5 months to get prepared for the conversion, and you didn't do it. So you have to leave the country. We are chasing you out of the country. So currently, the lawyer still didn't accept it. So we took back the case to court, and lucky enough, within this month on 21st, I'm having another court hearing on in the district court in Jerusalem, and I don't know how it will go, but I know we're gonna win, because I always have this feeling that I'm a winner, and I'm Jewish. I know I'm Jewish, and I know I will be an Israeli. It's only time that's taking longer, but I will be an Israeli very soon.
I just want to add that some of you may know this, but Iyyun and Sara, who are on the call, their daughter Nomi is a lawyer who works with, I don't know if you know that, that's Iyyun and Sara. She works with for the Israel Religious Action Center and works with with Nicole Maor, the lawyer who is representing Yosef, and who we heard at the Supreme Court. She's amazing, wonderful, brilliant lawyer.
Well, thank you so much, Sara and Yosef. Sara, your the background and the foundation you gave us about the Hokashvut was just really important to hear. And Yosef, oh my God, your story was so inspiring and just so incredible. And the energy and the passion that you have in sharing that story really touched us all in our hearts. Let's open it up for some questions. I was just given like an extra 5 minutes because I if that's okay with everybody, because I know some of you will have questions and I want to give Sara and Yosef some time to address those. So just speak up, anybody? If you want to, you can unmute yourself. You can just speak up.
I have a question. I just want to say that this struggle has been, as Yosef said, or Sara mentioned, it's been going for 15 years, and it's very political. It's not just a question of law and court, and even when the Supreme Court has made a decision about conversion by the Reform and the Conservative movement, it didn't make any changes in the rabbinical assembly and in the government, and the law of return has not been changed accordingly. And that's why we have to keep fighting so hard for people. That we wish you all the best, Yosef, and I really hope to see you among us for a long, long time. And that's part of the struggle of shaping the state of Israel.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Iri. And Yosef, you certainly did have changed the face of history and what's to come for the future. And we hope.
There's a question in the chat, Lauren Strauss, my New Jersey compatriot. Lauren asked, she can't turn on her camera, so she can't ask this directly, but she asked what role we think racism has to play in this. Racism is a conversation we've had a lot, so it's, what do you think? You want me to answer? My answer is definitely. My answer is I have no doubt that racism is a part of this, and Yosef has two big strikes against him. He has a lot of strikes for him, which are his unbelievable optimism and strength of character and his dedication and his moral compass and everything. But the strikes against him are that he is conservative and that he is Black. And I think both those things are making this case a difficult one for the government to swallow. But I don't, they can't come out and say that in so many words, although there's been statements that are close to having said that.
But I would also like to say, that's in their perspective, not everybody's perspective. This is not what I take it. Because if I take it this way, then I wouldn't have my Ima here. I wouldn't have all of you listening to my story. So I don't take it like everybody or Israelis, like they say, Israelis are racists. No, a few that is the name of Israelis are the one we like. I ignore. Like I'm this kind of a guy who look at only the positive. I leave the negative because at the end of the day, the negative will not help me. Only the positive will help me. So I know it's one of the reasons why it's taking longer. But then I don't overlook at it. I look at the good people who are working with me all the way from the start until maybe the end. Though it's the fact that racism is contributing to the delay of the case.
I would also like to say that when we first talked about racism with Yosef at a dinner conversation. I'll never forget this story he told us about going on a bus. Remember that? The bus?
Yeah. I think I can use 1 minute. So I got this bus. I was traveling from the kibbutz to the north. So we have this system of like you book a reserve, and then the bus comes from Eilat and gets you to the bus stop of the kibbutz. So I had booked my reservation, and then when I got to the bus, there was someone who was already sitting occupying my seat. And then I was so frustrated because I was going a long way. I can't stand the whole journey until the north. So I went to the driver with my receipt because it has a number that this is your seat. So I went with my receipt to the driver after telling the person who was occupying my seat that this is my seat and I want to sit. So stand up, get out of my seat, I sit. By then my Hebrew was really, really terrible. But you know, sometimes the body language can tell how someone has responded to you. So I know the lady was not happy with me. So I went to the driver because now it was
and she also didn't get up.
Yeah, she didn't get up. She didn't get up. So I went to the driver for help, and I showed the driver, this is my seat. So someone is already occupying my seat. What can I do? What the driver did was so impressive. He parked the bus aside and told everybody to go to occupy, like sit in the number that their receipt says. That bus parked like for 5 minutes, and everybody was changing to their specific seats, that seat numbers. And I got a chance to sit in my seat because I had already reserved it. So to me, this like, I asked myself, where is racism here? Because if there was racism, then the bus driver could not even listen to me. This is a black guy. If you want stand, if you want sit on the floor, I don't care about you. But one black guy made everybody to change to sit in the seats that they were supposed to sit in, just because I complained. So this gave me an implication that yes, there is racism, but then not everybody is practicing it. Like, even it's normal. It's a normal thing to be hated by people and to be loved by some. So like, I don't really want to look at the negative part of that. Like Israel is a racist country, but I look at this guy spent 5 minutes of the journey just because I complained. You know, respecting that law like made me really, really proud. And that's when I said, like, yes, there is racism, but then I don't see racism being practiced here. So I always answer the question of, I have had a lot of this question is like, have you experienced racism? Most of the time I always say, no, I have not experienced racism. Because the first time I would have experienced it, I didn't experience it. So where is racism? You know? But there is racism. We can't deny that.